Welcome to the Just Enjoy Health podcast. This is episode number 53.
You're listening to the Just Enjoy Health podcast with Dr. Meghan Birt, a healthy living podcast designed for women to inspire a love for natural health and holistic living. This podcast is for you wherever you are in your health journey. You'll learn all about the healthy living tools you need in your toolbox to feel equipped to take care of yourself and your family naturally. Here's your host, chiropractor, educator, and healthy living encourager, Dr. Meghan Birt.
Today's sponsor is the Just Enjoy Health Academy, my lifestyle program that I put together so that you can shine in your life. Because sometimes healthy living can feel a little overwhelming and often overcomplicated. So you know that my mission is to simplify healthy living as much as I can, because healthy living doesn't have to be complicated. And in this step-by-step online program, I will teach you everything you need to know to simplify healthy living so you can begin to truly thrive. If you're ready to take control of your health and eliminate the guesswork that often comes with getting healthy, the Just Enjoy Health Academy is the perfect solution for you and your very full life. If you use the code PODCAST, you can get $50 off the cost of the program. Welcome, friends, to this episode of the podcast. I'm really excited to bring this interview to you because it's covering a topic that I guess I haven't addressed that much because it's a really hard one to address, and that is about EMFs or EMR, which is electromagnetic frequency and electromagnetic radiation. And today on the podcast, I have Daniel DeBaun. He's an internationally recognized expert in the EMF radiation, EMF shielding, and the EMF-related health issues, and he has a special focus on the effects of those exposures from mobile devices like laptops, tablets, and cell phones. So Daniel is the CEO and co-founder of DefenderShield, which is an EMF shielding device company, and I have been using their Defender pad for my computer for 5 years. And as you'll hear in the interview, I didn't realize that I was probably one of the first people to purchase that product. I don't know where I heard about it, but I knew I needed it, and it has held up so well over the last 5 years. So you'll hear more information there. So Daniel's concern regarding the health impact of EMF emissions grew over 30 years of engineering experience in the telecommunication industry. So he's got a lot of history behind what he did, and he'll tell a story about how he created DefenderShield and then also wrote his book, Radiation Nation. I'm excited, like I said, to bring this to you to talk about this topic that's really invisible but can have a really big impact on our health, especially as women. And we also talk in here how you can not take a victim mentality against EMFs, that you really can work and have a mindset of reducing your exposure as much as you can. And we give some tips in there too. You'll hear in the podcast, but I want to tell you now that Daniel and DefenderShield has given the listeners of the Just Enjoy Health podcast a special coupon. So you can get 10% off your order of anything at DefenderShield by using the coupon code Dr. Meghan. So DRMEGHAN. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you do have questions, you always can hop into our Facebook community group or else send me an email. I'd love to discuss this further. Hello and welcome to the Just Enjoy Health podcast. I have Daniel DeBaun with me. And so I'm really excited to have you here. Today we are talking about EMFs, which are electromagnetic frequencies. So welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Meghan. I appreciate you inviting me on. I'm so excited about having a chance to talk to your listening audience.
Right. Well, I have been really passionate about EMFs, but also kind of hesitant because for me, it's a topic that's really in depth, and yet it's something that's invisible. And it can be really overwhelming too, but it needs to be addressed. And I'm excited to bring it to my listeners now and just talked about. But we're going to try to make it as simple as possible for everybody listening. And I love just in my whole business to simplify health just topics and make them less complex so people can take action on them. So I'm excited for them to get a better understanding of EMF. So let's start off. Tell me a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll just dive dive into knowing what are EMFs, because I know that's so part of your story.
Well, actually, I was in Bell Labs quite a number of years ago, and I used to write standards and test technologies to see if they met those standards. So I had a lot of really detailed background in the scientific side of technology. And then more recently, we've written a book, my son and I, Radiation Nation, and it's trying to start a dialogue, a national dialogue about what is electromagnetic radiation and how does it influence our lives. And by the way, Dr. Meghan, I actually wrote it for mothers, for grandmothers, because this stuff is so complicated. It needed to be expressed in a way that all of us understood the problem. So we worked on creating the book. And I also run a company that does shielding for electromagnetic radiation. So that's quick background.
Right. I love that. And then I believe the proper term is electromagnetic radiation, but they are EMFs, correct?
Yes, they equal the same thing.
Okay.
Electromagnetic radiation, ELF is the same thing.
Okay, because I've heard it both ways, and I wanted to make sure that if people saw EMR, they knew that it was the same thing as EMF.
Same thing. Yeah,
yes. Right. So let's dive in. What are EMFs and what is electromagnetic radiation?
Okay, I like to start off by saying that it's not in nature. Cows in the field don't emit electromagnetic radiation. It's stuff that man has created. It's stuff that is a byproduct of machines, electrical machines running. And it's a byproduct, and it's a direct result of communication links that we have in our lives. The cell phone connection, for example, the Wi-Fi connection to our laptops. All of these are sources of electromagnetic radiation. And they, 10 years ago, were not much of a problem because, well, this stuff wasn't around us very much. Mm-hmm. It's only in the last 5-10 years that we really have been encroached in our personal lives so significantly that it's now potentially influencing our body and how we live our lives. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But nature doesn't have it. It's created by us.
Right. That's a really good way of thinking about that it's created by us and it's just not normally in nature. And I think that does bring me to my next question, because I feel like so many people can brush off EMRs and just saying, oh, whatever, I can't see them. They can't be a big health concern to me. So why should people care about EMFs? Because in your book, Radiation Nation, you do have a part that says, why should we care? And so I think that it's good to draw that line of why we should care. And then you also say in your book that there is enough evidence, because so often it's people say like there's not enough evidence to draw any health conclusions. And you say, yep, there is the evidence there to draw the conclusion to EMF safety.
Yeah. In the book, we do talk about that. And I'll tell you a little story. When I was in Bell Labs quite a number of years ago, everything we did was scientifically based evidence. And we would look at data all the time. And I got involved only 5-6 years ago in electromagnetic radiation and its impact to the body. And I did it for reasons I'll share a little bit later, but it was a trigger for me to look at the data that was in the scientific community. And I was stunned. There was so much evidence that I call it a preponderance of evidence that exists that at the very least says you should really be cautious in your lives and make sure you don't get too exposed, because there are health concerns that you need to be worried about. A precautionary measure is what they call that. Mm-hmm. And so, it's stuff that's in our lives. And I was talking to before, when I was in Bell Labs, we had these mainframe machines. They were 50 feet away, 100 feet away. They didn't bother us. But now we have it in our laptop right in front of us, and they're emitting emissions. It's all the stuff that's close to our bodies. So there is health concerns. There is evidence. And I won't cite too many of the studies, but here's one that's really, really important. Last year, the federal government, the Federal Toxicity Program, which is a division of the federal government, spent $25 million. They tested the cell phone transmitters in an epidemiology study with a significant population that gave you statistically significant results. And what they found was those who weren't exposed to too much were fine. Those who were exposed to a lot had 2 to 13% increase in the tumors within the heart and in the frontal lobe of the brain. So it's serious, and we're knowing now through science that there's a lot of evidence that says you should be reasonably worried about this in your lives because it's impacting you.
Mm-hmm. What do you say, or what do you think and maybe see are some of the health concerns that people have the most of, or that could be tied to their exposure to EMFs?
There are quite a number of it. You've heard of ADHD, leukemia. You've heard of a bunch of stuff that goes on. But I'd like to bring to your attention something that probably most women don't know. Almost 20%, and it's a growing statistic, says you're electrically hypersensitive. The exposure that you're in front of is actually giving you headaches. When you get close to these signals, you get headaches. Your hands hurt. They have pins and needles in your hands. You may have a vision blurriness. There's so many different aspects of impact, but 20% or more of women have electromagnetic hypersensitivity.
And that
is a growing concern. Yeah. It's like multiple chemically sensitive people, which you're aware of. Mm-hmm. That's existed because of the chemicals in the air. The volatile gamma compounds are actually bothering your body. Well, guess what? Electromagnetic radiations are a toxin to your body. And so you're having the same effect because the cell's a cell. It's saying, I don't like the toxin exposure. And by the way, to reinforce the message of being concerned, the World Health Organization considers this electromagnetic radiation, particularly the radio frequency stuff. It's a category 2B carcinogenic. It's arsenic. Arsenic is considered carcinogenic, and that's what they consider radio frequency emissions.
Right.
These are the where you're being exposed to. And here's a really, really interesting point. I mentioned radio frequency. That's RF, right? That is electromagnetic radiation. Mm-hmm. That's what's used to connect to the cell tower. Well, let's talk about what happens when you put a piece of meat in a microwave oven. You take that meat, you put it in, you turn it on. What happens? The water that's between the cells heat up. The cells oscillate, and they cook the meat. And you have dark cooked meat. Well, guess what? Electromagnetic radiation, RF, is a microwave signal. It's the same frequency, except it's much less power, but it is a thermally emitting transmitted signal. So RF is dangerous to some.
Yes. Remember in your book, you were saying that the old signals were analog, and now with the new digital signals, and kind of the analogy you used, you said, let's just say you put, a big block on a sidewalk, and it was concrete, and you just set it there. It wouldn't break the concrete because it's one big signal. And now with the new digital signals, it goes on, off, on, off. So it's like taking that same, 20-pound block and just hitting it on the concrete over and over again. You're eventually going to break the concrete. And that was huge for me to just go in my mind process and go, this is affecting my trillions and trillions of cells because they're getting on-off signals, kind of breaking them apart potentially, depending on how much I'm exposed to.
Yeah, that's a great point. Before it was a constant load. Now it's a jackhammer. Mm-hmm. It's hitting the cell, breaking down the cell. What does that actually mean? I have a friend of mine, Dr. Ali Johansson. He's out in Sweden. And he says in his work that it's not just the cell weakening because of this pounding signal. It's actually affecting the immune system. It's suppressing the immune system while it's doing that to the cell. It actually can damage the cell itself because now it's a jackhammer. Why is that important? The standards that were there to protect us were made on an analog signal, not a digital signal. That's an important point.
Mm-hmm. That's a really important point. And I think I just wanted to talk about that more and kind of hit home the health consequences because it's so invisible. And I think people can have this idea that's like, it's just not there. It can't be as bad as they say when so many, whether it be health issues or symptoms or things that are just running us down, could be the constant influx of working on your laptop on your lap for 10 hours a day or anything like that. So we will get into it maybe a little bit more, but I want you to talk about now because just more about your company, DefenderShield, and then your book, Radiation Nation. So I have to tell you, I have had a Defender pad for my laptop for at least 5 years. I love it. It is amazing. And I remember 5 years ago thinking, I'm going to invest in something like this, because EMFs and EMRs were more new. And it is one of my favorite things because I know that I'm protecting my body, especially when I was pregnant, that if I had my laptop on my lap, it's almost 100% of the time my Defender pad is underneath it. And I just have loved it so much and recommend it a lot because I see Instagram photos or Facebook photos of people, and I see it a lot in pregnant women. They've got their laptop on their laps. I'm like, ooh, get something under there to shield it. So can you just talk more about your book and your company? Because I love your company and what you're doing.
Yeah, I will. And actually, you're triggering is actually how I got involved in this stuff.
Really?
My sons were visiting me. They were there. They were sitting and they had their laptops on their lap for 3, 4, 5 hours a day. And my wife says, that can't be good for you. I want grandchildren. Now, my wife's not scientific, right? But with my laboratory experience, I said, wait a minute. I know exactly what it is. So what I did was I said, well, let's find out if it's really a problem or not. What I found was after 3 to 4 hours of concentration of exposure, 25% of the male sperm is immobile. 2% of female fertility within the body gets tumors. Of that, a small portion becomes cancerous. And I'm thinking to myself, why doesn't everybody know this? It was like some obscure messages that I found in the scientific research. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, let's go buy something to fix it. And we couldn't find it.
Yep.
So we said, let's make some. So I built some for my boys. They used them, and then they said their friends wanted some. So I built some for their friends. And all of a sudden, I'm building these products that have the shielding that protects the body from the signals penetrating the body through a shield. And that started with Defender Pad, which you're using. And then we said, well, let's worry about cell phones, because I'm really worried about cell phones because it's directly hitting the frontal lobe. It growing at 2% per year for the last 10 years, by the way, frontal lobe cancers. And I said we had to try to find a way of doing that. So we embodied technology within the DefenderShield products. And we knew that kids particularly used tablets all the time. So we built products for tablets. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to, we're not victims, in my opinion. There are things we can take actions for, and that is protection by shielding. Mm-hmm. Something else we need to talk about. When you think about a radio frequency signal of Wi-Fi, a Bluetooth, any source of material, Dr. Meghan, you want to think about it as each one of them are a bee in the room. Mm-hmm. Think of it that way. One bee won't kill you. If you have 1,000 bees in the room, then they can kill. So I use that analogy to demonstrate you really should find the sources of these emissions and distance yourself or just turn them off. Like, for example, at night, when your Wi-Fi is running, take a timer, turn it off at night with a Christmas tree timer. Just turn it off. You don't need my products. If you know your environment and you are diligent in trying to protect yourself by reducing the number of bees in that room, you're pretty safe.
Mm-hmm. I like the bee analogy because, and it's almost like you have invisible bees in the room then, and just being on those electronics so much and making sure, like you said, you're shielding. And one of the things with the Defender Pad that I love, and I've told lots of people this, I said, if you put your laptop on, it's like a laptop stand, and it has like one of the sides slippery, and the other side has just like a little grip to it. So your laptop doesn't slide off. And I was like, it's really nice to work on if you happen to be working on your lap. So it makes, I feel like, working on your lap easier, or if you bring your computer into bed. So it's almost like it's glued to the bottom of my laptop. Comes with me everywhere.
Dr. Meghan, what we really found also to be true, kids use them. We were really worried that kids wouldn't put it on their lap because it was a pain in the neck. But the feedback has been that's not a problem at all. They actually get used to it and they use it as a part of their lives and as a writing thing, put their laptops on, their coffee, whatever that works. So it's really integrated into the parts of people's lives. And by the way, there are things that you worry about and that you can actually take actions for. And we're actually expanding our product lines, and we're continuing to bring safety, if you choose, to protect the body with our company. So we're pretty excited about what we're doing, because we started off because my wife said, she wants grandchildren. That was literally why I started off.
Right. You're like, okay, well, find a solution to the problem. Well, and I feel like that's how a lot of businesses start, is by finding a solution to a problem that you have around your life, and then people want it. So then you also, with your son, you said wrote the book Radiation Nation, which I have read, and it's a small book, but it's a lot of information. I feel like that doesn't make it too overwhelming, but I feel like you said earlier, it starts the conversation and it gives people solutions where they can take action on EMRs. So do you want to say anything more about your book? Because I feel like it should be in everybody's hands.
Yeah, I will. We wanted to start a national conversation. There was no question about it. We were frustrated because there were so many people contacting us saying, look, I get a headache every time I put the cell phone to my head. By the way, I don't have children, and I don't know why. We had all these questions being asked for us, and we said, look, we got to let people know this stuff is serious stuff. And what we didn't realize was, in the medical community, they're silos. Research doesn't talk to the practitioner. The practitioner doesn't talk to the radiologist. And what we found was, one very prominent radiologist read the book and called us up and said, I've always understood ionized radiation. I never understood that you can have mutated cells and DNA damaged cells from low levels of emissions exposure. And so these people are actually changing their practices, because now they're understanding that these things in our lives can influence, and it emulates other things, because a cell is a cell.
Well, as a chiropractor, I took a lot of x-rays, and you'd go behind the lead wall. So it's kind of like, how do you protect yourself from the EMRs? What's your lead wall for those? Yeah, that is well, actually, believe it or not, one of the shielding materials we use within our products was that you can't use lead, by the way, to shield you like you did with an x-ray. And I always love to tell the story. Do you know why the person taking a photo and an x-ray runs to the other room and pushes a button and then peeks out and sees if he's still alive? The reason that is because they're ionized radiation damaging the cell. That's what's going on. Well, non-ionized radiation, the stuff we're talking about today, damages the cell as well. But you can't use lead to shield it. I took some technology that we had in Bell Laboratories, believe it or not, and I integrated that into the technology we have, because it refracts the signal and it dissipates within the materials. So we actually found what combination of materials can actually do 100% shielding, and that's what's in our products. Right. You have headphones that I don't talk on my phone very much at all, but I want to get a pair for my husband too. I just saw, because you can block that radiation there. So if I ever am on my phone, if it's going to be more than a couple second conversation, I always put headphones in. But knowing that there's safer headphones, if people are on their phones all the time, you can get that phone away from you and still be able to talk on your phone.
Yeah. And in fact, what we tried to do is we literally eliminated the emissions to the body, to the head. We took it and we converted it to an acoustical signal, and air doesn't emit RF. So we eliminated it completely. And our goal was to build them as a high-end product at a reasonable price. And we think we have.
Right. That's, like I said, it's the next on our list. I really wanted to get them and use them more. Well,
by the way, that's one of our most successful products. Really, people really like those.
Oh, that's awesome. This is just a side question I'm thinking of right now. I have headphones in as I'm taping this. Do you get EMRs from your computer when you listen to headphones?
Actually, you get, we haven't had time to talk about the differences. It's extreme low frequency stuff, which is really, really low frequency stuff. It is in the coming from the wiring. And that's why I did the acoustical linking, because I eliminated that wiring. And that's what we embodied in that product.
Well, now I know I need to go get them.
Exactly.
Because I'm on my...
That brings up a very important point. You were asking me before about our products. And I often tell people, you don't actually need those products if you are diligent and understand your environment. For example, we talked about you can protect your shielding. Well, believe it or not, the most danger to your cells on a cell phone, for example, to your head, is when it's right up against the head. That's when it's worse. And if it's 1 foot away, 80% of that danger is gone, by the way.
Wow.
By 4 feet away, almost 98%. In other words, if you want to be in the room, make it far away enough from you where it doesn't bother you. And simply moving it helps.
Right. That's great. Well, and it kind of brings me to the next question we can talk about is, what are some things people can do? Like you said, if you're on your phone and you don't have good headphones, bring the phone away a little bit on speakerphone. So what are some other simple tips that you can give people that can allow them to get rid of some of the EMRs in their life and shield properly?
Dr. Meghan, the very other simple thing you can do is if you talk on your cell phone for 5 minutes, you're not in trouble, most likely. Probabilities are that it's a very low exposure with low impact to your cells. If you're on for 3 hours, you got trouble. So time exposure is very important. Watch your time. If you're going to be exposed for longer durations of time, you increase the probability of damage to the cells and potentially your body. And duration is referred to as duration, and distance is the other thing. Just simply put stuff away. If you have a smart meter and it's on your garage wall and it's 20 feet away, should you panic? Absolutely not. If you have a smart meter sitting in front of your bedroom with your head board right at that meter, move the bed, because the distance is too short. You want to just simply get away from the source of the emission, and you're pretty safe when you do that. That's good
to know. So what about Wi-Fi? I know that you said, unplug it at night. Here's our issue. We live in a townhome. We pick up about 8 Wi-Fi signals at all times. I'm like, turning ours off at night, does that do enough? Because maybe it does, because we're bringing distance in. So I was curious about that, because Wi-Fi is everywhere. Every coffee shop, if you ride a bus, it's on there. Every place has Wi-Fi.
Yeah, actually, that's why I referred to this as bees in the room. That is, the more bees in the room, the more dangerous it is. However, given I said that, when you take your RF Wi-Fi off at night, you're removing the stuff that's closest to you. And so if there's distance between your neighbors, that signal is a really, really a low-level signal. And so I wouldn't panic about it too much.
Okay, good to know.
If you have a cell tower and it's right outside your bedroom, I've been asked this before. I tell people to move.
Right.
Because you can shield those. Very expensive shielding technologies can be applied where you don't allow that RF signal to pass through you. But if you don't want to spend that kind of money, move, because there's a long duration of exposure, and it's a strong signal that you're exposed to.
And we looked specifically with our house, we looked at making sure that there was no cell tower close by, but there are some big cell towers. So we'll see them too. And I'm like, I wouldn't want to live there. So that's it's always on my mind of, what's around me. And like you said, it's going to have the bigger signals and what things are much smaller too.
Yes, you're right. And you really do need to be cautious like that these days. And jumping forward, there's 5G technology coming into us. And we were talking about the jackhammer before. Mm-hmm. There were actually 2 jackhammers in that.
Really?
5G. Yeah, 2. As scientists, we don't know the impact of double, but we do know from analog to digital, there was a pretty significant impact. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to have this 5G coming on us, and those cell towers will be blocks between each other, not miles. Mm-hmm. So you want to really pay attention when you do find a place you want to live and buy or rent, that you try to find a distance from those kind of sources.
Well, and I like what you said earlier. We are not victims. We can protect our bodies. So this is a question that I've had in my mind. What about like the watches and the different like technologies that you wear on your body, like you wear on your arm? Do those have a big signal to them? Do you have to be as concerned about that? Because I have never bought one because I'm like, I don't want that signal on me or Bluetooth around. So do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll tell you a story. I do yoga for years. And my teacher came to me and she had one of these watches. And she said, look at my watch. And I looked at her and I said, what are you, nuts? That's a Bluetooth transmitter. If that Bluetooth transmitter is constantly transmitting, it's a constant load. Now, your wrist is fine, but it's the proximity to the soft tissue of your body that you're worried about. Mm-hmm. So let me put that in a grander context. The worst exposure is when the strength of the signal is going farthest. So what does that mean? Your cell tower can be up to 5 miles away. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of like your worst case. Wi-Fi can go 300 to 500 feet. So that's not as bad, but it's still less danger, but still significant impact potentially. A Bluetooth is much, much less. It only can go up to 30 to 50 feet. So the strength of it is not too bad. But I'll caution you, because when we look at the studies, no one differentiates the strength of the signal very well. And so we only speculate what the impact of low-level radiation is on cells. We don't differentiate between the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi and the cell tower. So I often say, be cautious. Mm-hmm. Don't expose yourself if you don't need to. And for me, knowing what my heart rate is not terribly important, in my opinion, for the exposure potentially. And particularly with children, by the way. You know, one thing we haven't talked about.
Yes, I'd like to talk about that, because I have a lot of mamas that listen, and I'm a mom too.
Let's talk about that. The standard was set 30 some odd years ago. It was made it was established as a 6 foot male on a thermal transmitted signal. That's the analog RF signal we talked about before, and occasionally used. I remind people 30 some odd years ago, I didn't have anybody to call with the cell phone because none of my friends had one. So occasional use meant a couple of minutes at a time, and it was certainly no more than that. Fast forward to today, that standard that was set then, does it apply? Well, people, our friends, our kids, they're all using it for hours at a time. So all of a sudden, casual use is very different than when the standard was created. But more importantly, it was for a 6 foot male. Mm-hmm. That 6 foot male signal goes 1 inch into the head and heats the thermal impact is 2 degrees, by the way. Okay. And if you were a child, 6 years old, that signal goes completely through their head, heating up that whole brain.
Wow. Well, I have a 20-month-old, so she's not exposed to too much, but she doesn't get an iPad. She doesn't get a cell phone. I don't let her touch my cell phone. I mean, unless she sneaks it. And if I ever let her look at pictures on it, I turn it on airplane mode. I think airplane mode is widely, it needs to be used more, because there are games that can be played on airplane mode. There are lots of things you can do on airplane mode. And so I'll do that if we go for a walk and I want to take my phone, which is my camera, I put it on airplane mode. mode. Nobody needs to get a hold of me. And I put it in my pocket so I can grab my photos that I do. And if she watches them, I make sure it's on airplane mode. My phone is out of the room when we're sleeping and it's charged. And my husband's is in our room, but he keeps it on airplane mode. So unfortunately, nobody can contact us at night if anything happened.
Actually,
but we turn it off.
In airplane mode, it's not transmitting; it's receiving. So believe it or not, it does work. But more importantly, you realize what you just said is you reduce the number of bees in the room. Mm-hmm. When you use a cell phone, for example, do you know you can have the cell phone transmitter on, the Bluetooth transmitter on, and the Wi-Fi transmitter on? Yeah. Turn them off if you don't use them. Only use one. Three is bad. One is much, much better than three. Mm-hmm. Turn them off.
Right. That's a great, I think those are great, really practical tips for people. Like you don't have to have all three on. Yeah. Turn that off because you don't need it.
Yeah. You don't need it. And when I'm home, I have a Wi-Fi network, right? But I don't use the Wi-Fi aspect of my cell phone because it's a source of transmission. It's a bee in the room. I just turn them off.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what I do, like when we got a baby monitor for our daughter, I really wanted to see her. And there was only one on the market that I knew of or know of that you could plug in to an Ethernet connection. So we got that one and put it as far away from her crib as we could without seeing her. So I think it's just, like you said, just learning how to shield things and not taking necessarily a company's product and just assuming it's super safe. And that's with anything. That's with food. There's so many things you could apply that to with personal care products, because we don't have the maybe health protective laws that it lets products get through, I guess I should say. So just being aware of what's on, what's emitting a signal, and just kind of critically thinking, I guess, in as simple ways as you can of making choices for your family that's going to block those as much as you can.
Well, Dr. Meghan, that's a brilliant move on your part. You removed the RF signal, the bee in the room, and you made it a wire connection, an Ethernet connection. You eliminated the potential impact to the body simply by going Ethernet. And by the way, that's a rule of thumb. If a device can be Ethernet, use the Ethernet. Mm-hmm. Do not use the Wi-Fi. Like, for example, when I have on my TV and I have my Apple TV or my Roku or my Amazon TV, you can connect an Ethernet to that device, and it won't be Wi-Fi. So you're not filling that room when you're watching TV. Mm-hmm. It's a simple thing to do. And actually, believe it or not, the speeds are faster, the service is better.
Right.
So why wouldn't you do it? You know? So.
Yeah, we try to do that as much as we can. My husband says if we ever built a house, which, we haven't, he goes, I'm going to put Ethernet ports, like at least 2 in every room. He's like, because I want to plug as much stuff as I can. And we have finagled in our house currently, like, where's the port we can plug this thing in? So that, I'm glad we touched on that because that's
that's a really important one.
Because then you can still have your technology, because technology is wonderful. I mean, we're taping this podcast on technology. It's not saying it's an all or nothing, but shield when you can.
I know I'm not throwing my cell phone out anytime soon. Right? I know that about me, right? But I would never put a cell phone to my head, ever.
Yep.
But today I do, and I don't worry about it because I have shielding. Mm-hmm. But we are not, as a society, going to throw this stuff out. It's too important in our lives. It's so integrated in our lives, and it brings so many values to our lives. There are so many benefits, scientific benefits from having these technologies in our lives. So that is the good thing. We're not going to throw it out, but be careful, be precaution with what you have around you, and you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Well, let's end on that because that is just the perfect thing of just being cautious and you're going to be fine and not letting it be so overwhelming where you don't take action, but then doing the things you need to do, plugging, putting something in the Ethernet port, turning off your signal. And you reminded me too, when I'm at home, like I don't need all my signals on my phone. Yeah, my Bluetooth is never on, but I'm like, I don't always need all of them on. So that's a really good reminder. reminder. And then I want to say two things before we're done. Your company DefenderShield gave my listeners of the podcast a 10% off code. So you can use Dr. Meghan, and it's good for a year. And it's 10% off your total purchase through your website. So I want to thank you for that. So once again, the code is Dr. Meghan, and Meghan with an H, Meghan, so that you can be able to purchase some of Daniel's wonderful products, because they are, and I would highly recommend that Defender pad to anybody, especially I would say 90% of my listeners are women, because of just fertility things, and making sure that you're protecting that, because your cell phone is, or your laptop's right on your lap.
Yes. You reminded me. Do you know when you have a laptop close to your pregnant woman's stomach, that the probability of a miscarriage is increased by 3%, 3 times if durations are too long?
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah. There's a lady who did that work 25 years ago. She's on the Bio Initiative. They're a series of doctors and physicians and practitioners and researchers that tell the world the current state of this stuff. Mm-hmm. An international group of experts that we really need to listen to.
Yes.
But yeah, 3 times if you're pregnant, 3 times.
Wow. I did not know that. Well, that is a good stat. I have been taking notes as you're talking so that I could put these in the show notes, all the tips that you have given people. And I think I'm going to create a lot of these into a blog post too, because we need to get the information out. So I'm so thankful that you were on this podcast. And if people want to know more about you or find you, your company's DefenderShield, so DefenderShield.com. And then your book is Radiation Nation. And do you have any different Facebook or Instagram links or anything you wanted to share?
Yeah, we actually, we post on Facebook, DefenderShield. We always post what's going on in the world. So if you're looking for a current understanding, best understanding at the moment, we have that on our Facebook. And by the way, if you really want to have a better understanding of this stuff, we put all the research in the consolidated learning part of our website, where you can actually go and look at some of these scientific studies and take a look and make the choice yourself if you think it's real or it's not real. But there is clear, repetitive scientific evidence showing a better understanding, which is something we all need to pay attention to. And we also do a blog. We try to get our messages out as much as we can, because as you pointed out, we do have to have a dialogue about this. And it is becoming so much of a part of our lives. With a little bit of practice, you're fine with it. It won't impact you. But if you're a woman, particularly, you are likely to be one of the 20% that have electrical hypersensitivity in time. And as you know, it gets worse as you get older. It doesn't get better.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all of your insights. I learned a lot, so I know everybody's going to learn a lot too. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much again. I really do appreciate you inviting me on and helping us share what we currently understand is to be the facts around this subject matter.
Yes. Yes. Well, and it helped me too, to be able to bring this more information to my Facebook group and my community too, because I'm a little bit more armed and dangerous in a good way, I guess you could say, with more information. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Just Enjoy Health podcast. I am so grateful for you taking the time to listen and to invest more into your health and living this natural health lifestyle. I'd love to hear more from you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate and review it on iTunes. It allows more people to listen to the podcast and to learn to live a healthier lifestyle. If you're not following me on social media, you can head to the show notes and find the links, or else go to meghanbirt.com/social for all of your links there. I post a lot on social media, different content and encouraging content, and just some basic how-to information, and I would love for you to follow me there.